Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Math with Mr. Emond. Today we're going to be continuing our unit on absolute value and reciprocal functions. We're looking at absolute value equations today, and we're going to be using the definition of an absolute value when we're solving for absolute value equations algebraically. And the first thing that we're going to kind of learn is that when you're solving for absolute value equations algebraically, there's two cases that you need to consider. The first case is that the expression inside the absolute value symbol is going to be positive or it's going to be zero. So let's look at what this is going to look like when we're solving for an absolute value expression. Let's do this first one here. So case one is going to be that what's inside our absolute value symbol, which is x, is going to be greater than or equal to 0. And the way that we're going to set this up is we're just going to put x in parentheses. So we're going to drop the absolute value sign and we're going to say that this is positive and that's going to be equal to 6. And so of course when we drop the parentheses, all we have is x equals 6. So that's our first case. Our second case is that the expression inside the absolute value symbol is actually going to be negative. So let's take a look at what this looks like when it comes to solving algebraically. Well, case 2 is that x is actually going to be less than 0. And what's going to happen in this case? Well, we still have what's inside our absolute value symbol here is x, but we're going to make it negative this time, showing that it's going to be less than or equal to 0. And of course, this is going to be equal to 6. So now when you distribute this negative sign to the inside of the parentheses, you're going to do negative 1 times x, which is negative x, and that's equal to 6. And then of course, when you multiply both sides by negative 1, you're going to end up with positive x, because negative 1 times negative x is positive x, equals, and 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. So we have these two solutions, these two cases that we've identified. And just to show you that this is actually the way it works, let's go ahead and test our answers. So our first one was that x equals 6. So is the absolute value of 6 equal to 6? Well, the absolute value of 6 is 6, and 6 equals 6. So of course it is. Let's try our solution for case 2, which is that x is actually negative 6. Is the absolute value of negative 6 equal to 6? Well, the absolute value of negative 6 is 6, and 6 equals 6. So of course there was two cases. One of them where this was a positive number or equal to 0, and one of them was a negative number. Now let's quickly go through what this would look like for this next one, where we have absolute value of x equals negative 2. And again, there's two cases, right? Your first case is that what's inside the parentheses is, of course, positive. And your second case is that it's negative. So we're just taking what's in the absolute values and we're making it negative by putting a negative sign outside our parentheses. And this is also equal to negative 2. Now you solve. So x equals negative 2, negative x equals negative 2. Multiply both sides by negative 1 here and you get x equals 2. So we have two solutions and we can test them. Absolute value of negative 2 equals negative 2. Absolute value of negative 2 is 2. Does 2 equal negative 2? No. So this is not a solution. Let's try this one. This one is absolute value of 2 equals negative 2. And absolute value of 2 is 2. Does 2 equal negative 2? No. Right? And let's just think about that. Why are none of these solutions working? Well, what we have here is the absolute value of a variable. Now, whatever value this variable has, isn't it always going to be positive because of these absolute value signs? It will. And something inside absolute value signs can never be negative, which is what we're trying to find. So of course, this is never going to work, right? So x cannot be a negative number. It cannot be a positive. There's no value where this is going to work. Let's try these first few problems, and hopefully they're going to help you visualize this a little bit more. So again, we have two cases. The first case where we just put what's inside our absolute value sign in parentheses and make it equal to that. The second case is going to be the same thing inside the parentheses, except we're making it negative this time. So in this case, this is for when x is going to be greater than or equal to 0, and this one for when it's less than 0. All right, and this is equal to 7 as well. Now let's solve. So on this one, we just have to drop our parentheses. So x minus 3 equals 7. We're going to add 3 to both sides, and so we're going to have x equals 10. On this one, we need to distribute this negative sign. So it's negative 1 times x minus 3. So we're going to have to distribute these. Negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times negative 3 is positive 3. So a negative outside our parentheses is basically going to reverse our signs here. And this is going to be equal to 7. Now we're going to have negative x. Let's subtract 3 from both sides. Negative x equals 4. And of course, let's make these positive. So multiply by negative 1. And negative 1 times negative x is x. And 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. So there's our two solutions. Let's check our answers. We're going to have 10 minus 3 in absolute value expression equals 7. And here, we're going to have negative 4 minus 3 equals 7. 10 minus 3 is 7. Is the absolute value of 7 equals to 7? Well, the absolute value of 7 is 7, and 7 equals 7. So yes. What is this? Well, we have the absolute value of negative 4 minus 3, which is negative 7, equals 7. What's the absolute value of negative 7? 7. Does 7 equal 7? Yes. So this one works. So we can see our two cases here identified that x can equal 10 and x can equal negative 4. So we have one value of x that's greater than or equal to 0 and one value of x that's less than or equal to 0. That are both solutions to this expression. Let's try this one. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to isolate our absolute value expression, and we're always going to do that. So we're going to have to subtract 3 from both sides. So we have the absolute value of x minus 2 equals 9 minus 3, which is 6. Now we're going to do our two cases. So we have x minus 2 equals 6 and negative x minus 2 equals 6. At this point, we can drop our parentheses on this one. X minus 2 equals 6, which means x equals 8. And on this one, we're going to distribute this negative sign. So we're going to have negative x plus 2 equals 6. Subtract 2 from both sides. Negative x equals 4. Multiply both sides by negative 1. So negative x times negative 1 is x, and 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Okay, we have to test our solutions. We don't want to box our answers yet because they might not actually work. So 8 minus 2 plus 3 equals 9. 8 minus 2 is 6, so we have the absolute value of 6 plus 3 equals 9. What's the absolute value of 6? 6. So 6 plus 3 equals 9. 9 equals 9. That one works. So this is a solution. Now that I've identified that, I'll box that. Now let's try this one out. So we have the absolute value of negative 4 minus 2 plus 3 equals 9. Negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6 plus 3 equals 9. What's the absolute value of negative 6? 6. So we have 6 plus 3 equals 9. And of course, 6 plus 3 is 9. 9 equals 9. Yeah, that works. So we can box this answer as well. So there we go. Hopefully you're starting to get in the mode here. All you do is you create your two cases and you solve them separately. Of course, this one's for when x is greater than or equal to 0, case number 1. And this one's for when x is going to be less than 0, case 2. Now, they're not always going to work. You have to test your answers. All right, it's going to be your turn. Go ahead and work through these problems and come back when you're done to check your solution. See you soon. All right, for those of you on YouTube, welcome back. We have the solutions for you. Let's go through them. So the first thing we did for this first problem, absolute value of x plus 3 equals 8, is we split it up into the two cases. And now we just solved for x. So on the first one, you drop the parentheses, you subtract -3 from both sides, and you find x equals 8. And when you check that solution, it does work. On the second one, of course, you have to distribute that negative sign. When you do, you have negative x minus 3 equals 8. When you isolate the x, you end up with negative x equals 11. And then you make it the negative x positive by multiplying both sides by -1, and x equals negative 11. And when you check that, of course, it works. For the second solution, again, you are going to split it up into the two cases. In the first one, you drop the parentheses, isolate x by moving the -6 to the other side, make the negative x positive, and you get x equals 4, and when you check it, it works. On the other one, you distribute the negative signs again, then you isolate x, and when you check it, it works. So our answers here are 5 and -11 for the first one, and 4 and 8 for the second one. Hey everybody, you can like, follow, and subscribe to my social medias to get notifications as soon as new content is uploaded. In the top corner here, you will find the playlist that this video is in. Watch the unit from beginning to end, and over here, you will find the next video in this unit. Keep learning, everybody. Take care.